What's up guys, Jayztwocents here, and today we're going to talk about a piece of your computer that often gets overlooked, and quite often I hear people say, you just get a cheap one and it's not going to really matter. Well, in this case it actually can. Today we're going to talk about case fans and radiator fans and how much of an improvement they really can make in your system. With its aluminum bezel, solid construction, and adjustable base, the vast 35-inch ultra-wide 100Hz VA panel from Massdrop offers performance at an affordable price. Learn more about this drop by following the link in the description below. So what we're looking at right here is my in-wind D-frame build that I did last year, well, beginning of the year before, I think, technically. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. This was my personal computer until I ended up bringing Skunkworks back home. So it's got two Titan XP, or little P, so it's the biggest Titan of the 10 series that was made. It's in a parallel loop, a single loop with dual rads, so two 360 rads by EK. We've got our Singularity computer's reservoir. We've got our single block right here for the CPU and VRM, so it's a monoblock for our Rampage motherboard. And it's got a 7900X in there. So it's not a crazy system in terms of like core count and all that, but it's certainly no slouch either. It definitely gets the job done with 20 cores, well, 10 cores, 20 threads, whatever. But the issue with this is, although this is a very tubular type of frame here, it's very open, there's no fans on top, it's not sealed off in any way. If you look at the temperatures right here, we have had Heaven running now for about 45 minutes, and you can see the temperatures are at 54 and 55. It will bounce between 54 and 58 degrees right now, depending on the scene. And the crazy thing about this, as you may know, Heaven does not stress the system nearly as much as games can. So what I saw when I was gaming on this is that my temperatures would reach the low 60s in playing things like Battlefield 5 and stuff. Entirely too hot for a water-cooled system, especially one that has got an open chassis like this that should not be impeding airflow in any way. The top right here is, if I had to make a guess, I'd say this is probably about 45, maybe even 50 C. Like, it's extremely hot coming out of here. When you touch the metal's heat soaked. It's heat soaking in something that is not sealed, which is a problem. So the Polaris fans that I'm using on here, they're in-wind daisy chainable fans that are 12 volt RGB, so non-addressable. They're just a standard 12 volt RGB that's hooked up to the Asus motherboard being controlled by the AI suite. Now they're running 100% right now. So these temperatures that you're seeing, the 54 and 55 C, is with the fans on the bottom bringing cool air in. There's plenty of gap down here for it to get air from underneath the chassis. It's bringing cool air in and up through the top, and this is also bringing cool air from the front like that. So the airflow is kind of like this, and the idea was if we've got all these fans pushing in, it'll give us positive pressure to push the air out. The problem is you cannot feel any airflow in here. The Polaris fans, although great as case fans and daisy chainable, making it easy to have one wire able to connect like 6 fans, I think it's 8 actually, I don't know, that doesn't really matter. The point is they're not good with static pressure and overcoming the resistance of the radiator fins. So what we're getting now is the air is just kind of coming through the radiator very slow and stale. And what we're getting now is a convection effect. So what we're dealing with right now is this is heat soaking to the point to where it finally gets hot enough to where the air rises and pushes itself out. But it doesn't do it nearly efficiently enough. And what's happening is the radiators cannot get enough airflow through them, meaning that we're getting this heat soak problem. In fact, my CPU right now is even sitting at 57 C with Heaven running. No, that's not super hot, but again, it's water cooled and it's not even that big of an overclock. It's like 4.2 gigahertz because anything higher and it was starting to get way too hot. Now, no, I have not lapped the CPU and I have not done a delid on this CPU, which would probably benefit it quite a bit. But how hot the GPUs are getting are telling me that we clearly are having a cooling inefficiency. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna try a couple of things. One, I just want a sort of proof of concept that if I can get this hot air out of this case, that it will help the overall cooling. Makes sense, right? If the hot air is trapped in here, that's causing a heat soak. It means the radiators aren't efficient at this point, and the hot air that's just sitting in here soaking everything is causing the temperatures as a whole to rise. So I'm gonna start by taking a 140 millimeter fan. This is one of the new Fractal Prisma fans. I'm just gonna set it on top right here, plug it into the motherboard to let this assist with the exhausting of air, to where this fan is pulling a good chunk of the hot air out rather than forcing the positive pressure coming through the rads to do the job with a convection assistant, or natural convection assistant. Shut up, shut up. Ah, well the whole ring turns. There we go. That'll do it. Well, what we're looking for here before I go through all the work is to see if this is gonna drop the temperatures at all. Because if it doesn't, well, then I don't know at that point. It's at 50-51 right now. So after only being like 60 seconds in front of it, it's dropped like 3 degrees. Oh, 49.50. All right, so proof of concept's working. More air means cooler, who would have thought? So we're bouncing around between 48 and 50 right now. Yeah, so this is actually a good proof of concept because, let me turn this off. This fan is not actually pushing air through the radiator. It's just lowering the temperature as a whole inside because the fans are still kind of working as resistance. So the air is still only gonna be able to go through the radiator as fast as the fan can push it. So this was probably speeding up those blades a little bit. And we saw a good 5C reduction, maybe even a little bit more than that. So we're gonna go ahead and push forward now with changing out those front fans, possibly the bottom ones as well, and seeing if we can't get these temperatures down. I'd be fine with anything in the mid 40s, but Pascal sitting in the mid 50s on water, that's way too hot. That means something isn't right. Well, I'd say 40s, high 40s is better than mid to high 50s, which is what we were seeing. And like I said, in a bedroom environment, this was hitting the 60s. So all I did was I changed out the in-wind fans for the EK Vardars in RGB. Now, yes, I'm well aware that they're louder, as you can hear. Yes, I'm well aware that they have a different blade design and that they're spinning faster. Obviously, that's the point of this video, is to show that by adding more RPM and more static pressure and more flow through these radiators, our temperatures greatly increased. Well, the efficiency of the radiators increased, the temperature decreased, which is kind of what we were looking for here. The Polaris fans are not good radiator fans, and Wynn even told me that, but they were pretty, and I was like, they're daisy chained, and it's fine. I've told people before, you could go with more radiator surface area, in this case, 2 360 rads, and just go with some slower fans and you'll be fine. But the problem in this particular use case is the fact that what I said is partly true. You can use cheaper fans, fans that are not gonna be, 20, 30 bucks a piece, and just use more radiators and get the same benefit of cooling without the noise and all that stuff. As long as your chassis has fans that are assisting with the exhaust. The problem is the radiator fans were responsible for not only pushing air through the radiator, but also the only airflow in this chassis whatsoever. So it was just too much for the Polaris to overcome. The resistance of the radiator fins, as well as having to deal with the exhausting of air, with even the assisted effect of convection with heat rising, it just isn't enough because heat doesn't rise until it gets hot. And then obviously, well, heat is hot, right? So the air doesn't rise until it gets hot enough for convection to become a thing, which at that point, it's already too hot for the components. Also too, if you're commenting like, well, you should have used a different fan with the same specs to test. No, that's not what we're testing. We weren't testing if we had the same CFM as we had before, we would have the same problem. So that would have done nothing. So in this case, get it? So in this case, our sacrifice has to be noise to overcome the amount of airflow and stuff. So if the radiator was up top, however, and this air was coming in through the front and then just going out the top like a case would be, like a normal, rectangular case, then the Polaris would have probably performed a whole lot better than with this radiator on the bottom. The problem is all the heat coming off this radiator, both of them actually, is pushing into the chassis, which is causing some of that heat. So by flipping a rad up here would have fixed that problem. Not possible in this particular chassis. So as you can see with the test still running, we're sitting at 47 and 49 respectively. So a heck of a lot cooler than it was before. I have to sacrifice a little bit of noise. So the whole point of this video was just to show you that there is a point of where the fans and the speed and all of that does matter, even with the amount of radiators. Because if I had another radiator on top, let's say I had one in the front, one on the bottom, one on the top, it would have been the same issue. In fact, it could have potentially even been a little bit worse, only because if we were still using Polaris fans on a top rad, with on the front and on the bottom, it still wouldn't have been moving enough air. We'd have added a little bit more of a choke point, in my opinion, and then this would have ended up becoming just as heat soaked and the temperatures would have risen just the same. It just might have taken a little longer to get there. So there you go. It's a case you guys haven't seen in a while, and a build that I'm very fond of, and I don't want to take apart, but it's got some damn good pieces in here that I could use in other builds. It's got an M.2 drive, it's got the Rampage motherboard on X299, and of course we've got the two 360 rads and the glass, two Titan XPs. It's like, wouldn't it be funny if I took these all out just to build another build? Which means I could have just left this one together all along. Whatever, I digress. Maybe I'll give it to my 9-year-old. All right guys, we'll see you in the next one.